AI is everywhere in accounting and tax, whether you like it or not, and whether you're aware of it or not. If your accountant or you use QuickBooks Online or Xero, AI is already involved. And I don't think at the end of the day that AI is necessarily inherently bad or inherently good. In my opinion, it's about literacy, intention, and using it or not using it, but choosing to use it if you do as a tool in your tool belt, toolkit, whatever we want to call it. So, in this episode of Wealth Witches, we're going to talk about how we at the Freelance CFO use it, where, in my opinion, AI is being oversold, especially in the tax and accounting realm. We're going to touch on the environmental piece and some questions that you should be asking your own accountant or thinking about for yourself that could be potential pitfalls. So, without further ado, welcome back to the Wealth Witches podcast. I'm your host, Katelyn Magnuson. So, we're going to start with the personal viewpoint on this. I see AI as an accommodation. I'm neurodivergent, and for me, AI is part of my overall accommodation stack. I look at it like I would, potentially medication or nervous system regulation or working out. It is not the have all, be all, holy grail savior of tools. It's not going to change my life overnight. Neither does each of those things, but everything together cumulatively, especially depending on what else is going on in my life or in my world at that time, is one area that can help. Some specific examples of tools that we use in our firm on a regular basis are Loom and Zoom, all the ooms as I call them, and they all have AI tools, AI integrations. What I like about those is it makes things searchable. It makes the transcripts searchable. I can get, you know, pullable to-do lists that come through, like Zoom will send through the AI summary at the end of a call. It will have action items. I can take the transcript from Loom and I can pull my action items for me. And this allows me to provide a better client experience and have fewer things falling through the cracks. The reason that I want to be transparent about this is because there have been times in the past where, with my executive function or dysfunction, depending on the week, for me, keeping up with the emails and the to-dos, basically going through doing these calls where I am, even with my favorite clients, masking to some extent, right? I finish a day of calls and I go, oh God, I know I had all of these different things that I needed to go over with them. And I either, like before in the olden days, I'd have to go potentially rewatch, or once I had an assistant, have my assistant rewatch and manually pull. This is what you said you do. This is what you said you needed from the client in order to send over a cohesive email after the fact to be able to ask the client for what I needed or what they needed to do, to be able to talk to various team members that we needed things, and then for myself to be able to do any of the action items that were needed. So, like I said, this is a very low lift tool that makes a very big difference both in my day to day and also in how our clients experience working with us. And like I said, fewer things potentially falling through the cracks. It's not then me coming back a week later going, oh God, I forgot to reply to this. Like, shit, what happened? So there's some guardrails that I personally have. I'm using the paid versions. I've toggled off any of the areas where I can, where, I don't want the large language models, LLMs, I think, training on the data. And that generally comes with the paid versions of any sort of AI tools. If I am feeding in any sort of data, there is nothing personally sensitive. There are no social security numbers. There are no EINs included in there. There are no pay stubs with personal addresses, like things of that nature. I don't think that we should be feeding that information in willy-nilly into ChatGPT or Claude or any of these other, plethora of tools, because as much as we think about it, I don't think that there's a way to really get a to completely not use AI at some point in time. Because even if you aren't using Claude, aren't using ChatGPT, aren't using these other options, they're integrated with everything. And a lot of times you can't opt out unless you opt out of the tool altogether. And at least at this point in time, for a business owner like myself, I'm not able to opt out of those tools and still be able to provide the services that I provide at this point in time in a way that is both cost effective and impactful. So, a few ways that we use AI at our firm, the Freelance CFO. So, we do use Claude. We did use ChatGPT. We do not use it any longer. And we're using, whether we like to or not, built-in AI in Xero or in QuickBooks. A prime example of this is we're not using AI to do the bookkeeping, but in Xero, for reference, if you see a charge from McDonald's come through, it will prompt you to say, oh, this is meals and the who or the contact is McDonald's. And you can say, okay. And that is like AI suggestions or AI assisted versus AI doing the work. And I don't trust anything from what I've seen to auto categorize everything with AI. That may be my own skepticism, but it does come from a healthy amount of research. This is not something that I am saying without having done my own exploration. I don't recommend things to clients if I haven't used them myself, or if I do throw something out as an option to a client, I will throw the caveat of I have not used this, but this is an option. If I'm going to fully, with my whole chest, recommend something, then I will have tested it. And for me personally, I know that I've been approached by quite a few, we're going to talk about this later, but I've been approached by quite a few AI forward bookkeeping or tax prep companies to test them as, an accountant partner. And I've looked into them. I've done my due diligence because it's important, I think, for me to understand and see what's going on in the larger accounting realm. And it's important for me to stay up to date, but it's also important for me to understand what my clients may be navigating, or even our potential clients might be navigating, right? And see the pitfalls that they may be up against. So all of these are really important to understand as a small business owner, whether you're working with an accounting firm or not, or plan to be in the future. So again, we're using the built-in AI in Xero and QuickBooks just because that is part of the daily interface. It's not, a separate tool that we go toggle on. We're using the Loom and Zoom transcripts. We are using Claude occasionally, primarily for assistance with emails and assistance, especially again, being autistic, sometimes interpreting emails that come across and also making sure that my intention is coming across clearly because that's not always the case. So again, a lot of these are woven in already. Like I know Gmail was like trying to force an AI integration. I think we've mostly opted out of that at this point because again, we get sensitive information that comes to our email even when we ask it not to be. And it's also another reason why I recommend not sending things via email if you can avoid it, especially like tax returns or pay stubs or anything that has your sensitive information or data in it. Now, I do think that while AI can be, again, one tool amongst many in your overall tool stack, I think it is being oversold to an extreme. So, with that, we're going to talk about the pitch that I've heard that companies make. So, what I've gotten from a couple of potential tax prep firms that are AI forward are you just drop in the 1099s, you drop in the income statement, you drop in the 1098s for the mortgage, AI does the return, your senior accountant reviews, it's a fraction of the cost. It's $70 a return, it's $80 a return, it's $100, any of these various tiers. And that sounded great in theory, right? We're human. The more time and the more data entry that we do, the higher the overall chance of there being a transposed number, despite all of our safeguards, right? Again, we're human. There's a reason we don't take thousands of returns on a year, and it's because we need to be fresh enough to minimize potential errors in returns, but we are still human at the end of the day. So for me, as a business owner in the accounting and tax realm, anything that I can do to increase efficiency, take things off of our team's plate so that they can do more impactful work sounds great and decrease potential room for error. However, I did a real world test with these and I took dummy data and ran it through several of them. And I had both accuracy and security concerns. The biggest one, of course, like if the security side of it is fixed and they're not using the data to train, and I know what servers it's running through, etc. The accuracy was not there. The amount of, we couldn't read this file, or they still need the human input. It takes more time to pull all the documents, label all the documents, prep all the documents, feed them into AI, and then go through and review and try and catch potential hallucinations or other issues. And then when I asked them, what is your accuracy guarantee? And they said that there is no guarantee and that a senior accountant has to review it on your end. You should never be pushing through returns that have not been reviewed. I understand that. But if we are paying for accurate data entry and it's supposed to be hands off and save us so much time, there should be some sort of accuracy guarantee, some sort of skin in the game on the part of these companies, and it is not there. And maybe that changes in the future, but at this point in time, it's not going to free us up. I would rather, especially again with the security concern and everything else, we don't plan to roll in tax prep on the AI front at this point in time. I don't know if that will change 10 years from now. I have concerns that it may make us less price competitive, to be completely transparent. And I think that it might cause us to have some really interesting conversations over the next few years across the accounting industry because I think that we're going to see firms that adopt this AI first or AI forward tax prep, bookkeeping, et cetera, and they're able to offer decreased prices, right? Because they have fewer humans working and they have AI running this and they have increased efficiency. However, in my experience, and we've seen this with tax preparers that don't know what they're doing. You generally, you as the person having your returns done, unless you're a tax expert and you catch these yourself, you're not necessarily going to know that there's a problem for several years down the line. It normally takes anywhere from 6 months to 3 years for you to start seeing oh, the IRS flagged this. Oh, this came through and we had this question. Oh, you went to another accountant and they reviewed them and they found these huge errors, all of which we have had happen with clients that have come to us from prior preparers that either didn't know what they were doing, they were in over their head, or they made mistakes, or some combination of all of the above. So we have, and any firm worth their salt should have errors and omissions insurance and professional liability insurance. We have that because, again, we're human. We make mistakes. And while we stand by our work and we are here to make it right, if it is ever a mistake that we can't fix on our end or we can't monetarily compensate for, which again, it is normal to have small errors here and there, a couple a year, a very small percent of the overall. And I think if anyone says that they don't, they're lying. What matters is standing by your work, making it right, and making a plan so that doesn't occur in the future. We have double checks, we have safeguards, we have so many different things in place, and our work reflects that. I am happy to stand by what we do. I want to see these AI companies doing the same. And so I think, again, this is a little bit of you get what you pay for. So there's some real world consequences, right? You may have penalties, interest, you may have to have amendments, refiled returns, you may have IRS notices that pop up. Like it can really open this can of worms. You can have a potential for a higher audit risk, especially if there's multiple years that start being found or discrepancies or things that are off. And again, you're not the expert here, and you trying to navigate this information and be like, oh, yep, that's great. Or like asking ChatGPT your tax questions. Do you know the number of times? Because I've tried it because we had clients and we had people that were interested were asking ChatGPT, oh, well, ChatGPT said, ChatGPT has hallucinated. And if you don't know it's hallucinating because you're not an expert in the field or the subject, you can't call it on that. It is not a replacement tool. It is something that can augment. So you wouldn't use, hopefully, you wouldn't use AI to do your legal work and then trust it blindly. You're paying for expertise. Like if my lawyers that I'm working with used AI to write their contracts, I would have an issue with that. If my lawyers use AI to help with their email management and their inbox and they're reviewing it before it goes out, I'm totally fine with that. I see it as a low stakes admin task versus it taking the professional experience that I am paying them for. I can go in and type in something in ChatGPT and be like, okay, great. Is this, what's the legal precedent for that? I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know if it's going to give me accurate information or not. And I know that one of the issues that comes up a lot is the environmental and the corporate responsibility. And I want to call that out here. So, data centers are a huge potential issue. They're an environmental impact, they're a drain on resources, they can affect groundwater, they can affect power. There are so many things that can go on. And I feel like this is very much a callback or a throwback to the 2000s reduce, reuse, recycle, where corporations are pushing responsibility onto individuals when the lion's share of the impact is the corporate side, right? The corporate impact, the corporate use, the fact that AI is integrated into fucking everything, whether we opt in or not. And that is something that I'd really like to see. I would like to see the ability to opt in or to opt out of AI and tools where I don't want AI. For example, if our client management, like our secure portal for uploads, if they start using AI and allowing that in there and don't give us an opt out, I would be switching softwares, in my opinion. It's not something that I would stand by. It's not something that I would be comfortable. And it's something that I am very aware of. Now, with this, I don't take using AI lightly. I'm not saying that I don't have a single impact. I have an impact when I drive. I have an impact when I fly. I have an impact when I consume meat. I have an impact as a homeowner. I have an impact with my garden. Every single thing I do in my life has an impact. For me, my use of AI is a larger part of my overall impact and what I'm looking at. I don't think that we as humans have to be absolutely perfect, right? I compost and I have, a sustainable agriculture focus with my yard. And, I only drive generally like once a week. My overall vehicle use is significantly lower, but I'm still driving. Like there's all of these things that factor into like my overall footprint as a human. And I think that I need to be aware of it. And I'm not frivolously using AI, but I also don't think I should be guilted, especially as a neurodivergent human, using this as part of my overall accommodations stack. While billion-dollar companies are building sprawling data infrastructure and integrating it for everything and having mass layoffs and all these other things, we have not had a single layoff or reduction of our employment with our team due to our use of AI. I don't ever plan on that being the case. Even when we had looked at these potential tax software options, it wasn't so that we could replace humans. It's so we could deepen our overall client relationship and spend less time on some of the minutia that we spend time on. And some of the areas that are, again, a higher potential for error, for transposing numbers. Where could we be using machine learning to assist with that? And at this point, I don't think it's there. So the bottom line here, in my opinion, is I look at AI use and I don't think it's an all or nothing for most of us, but I look at it as the same way that I choose who I shop with, that I choose, I want to choose how and where I'm engaging with AI. I want to choose, when I'm working with business owners, I'm working with woman owned, you know, very frequently queer owned, person of color owned businesses. Like I'm directing where my money is going. If I can support a small business just like myself, I want to be doing that whenever possible. I'm looking at that in the same way of, am I using ChatGPT? Am I using Claude? Am I using something, a tool that just laid off a whole ton of different people? Or am I using something that has ethics, that is for the responsible legislation of AI, that is for guardrails? And I think that that is something not being talked about nearly enough is I don't feel like it's something we can avoid. So how are you choosing to engage, or are you choosing to engage responsibly? And we're almost done with this, but I want to talk here about hallucinations. I think that I've seen it come up more and more. We've actually had people find our firm. I think 6 or 7 people now have found our firm. We have several clients that have come to us via ChatGPT searches. We're showing up. We're not specializing our SEO for it. Who knows? Maybe we will in the future. But if you're on there and you're looking at ChatGPT and you're trying to use it for end use results, right? Is this tax deductible? How do I do my taxes? Is this legal? What are deductions for XYZ? ChatGPT hallucinates. ChatGPT is there, and I'm going to use ChatGPT as like AI tools in general, right? Kind of like how we call tissues Kleenexes. I forget what the name is for it specifically, but when a brand becomes synonymous with an item, AI tools hallucinate. They can hallucinate deductions, they can hallucinate information, they can hallucinate data. Do not use it for something where the stakes are high. If I'm using AI, I'm using it in areas that I'm already a subject matter expert because it allows me to verify the data being provided. Prime example. During the time that I was testing ChatGPT, I was working on some quarterly estimate calculation tools. I asked for quarterly estimates and it gave me 3 installments. And I said, quarterly means 4. And then it goes, oh, yeah, you're right. I'm so sorry. What if I didn't know that? I know that's a really simplified version, and probably a lot of people would catch that. There are so many other little areas, though, where that can happen. And if you are not an expert enough to understand that, I don't expect you. If you're a photographer, a videographer, a wedding planner, I don't expect you to be an expert in the tax area. Just like I'm not an expert in the law. I'm not using AI tools for something that is not already in my wheelhouse. So also, it's not defensible. If you do your taxes with ChatGPT or you deduct something and the IRS comes back and you're like, ChatGPT told me, It's not a tax strategy. You don't have any recourse on that. So, the confidence with which AI can lead you astray is absolutely astounding. So, please, if you are using AI now, be mindful, be thinking about what you're doing. And in closing here, I have some questions for you to ask your accountant or your tax preparer or yourself if you are the accountant here. Do you use AI? How? How is your data secured that you're sending over to them? What information is being fed into AI tools? What information is walled off, not allowed? Where are the boundaries? What are the bumpers? And if you find out that they're using an AI assisted return or bookkeeping because there are bookkeeping services out there now where you have AI doing the books and it's $175 a month and they go do it and you could white label it as an accountant. Again, I know this because I've been reached out to and I think it's a crock of shit. I think it sounds so good in theory and I want to hypothetically love it, right? Because if we could have more time with clients, if we could provide a bigger impact, if we could not have to have price increases because we can have our team, but our team is only doing the things that require a human, that would be great. Unfortunately, 90% of it still requires a human. And I think that it is not being talked about nearly enough. But if you're working with a firm or you're using an AI tool for your bookkeeping, for your taxes, you need to ask if something goes wrong with AI assisted returns, with AI assisted books. Is there a guarantee? Are you standing behind the AI, like the GPTs that you've trained or the AI, learning models that you've trained? Or are you absolutely shit out of luck as a consumer, which 9 times out of 10, probably 10 times out of 10, you're going to be shit out of luck as a consumer. So I want to leave you with AI literacy is a part of your overall financial literacy now. And I'm not saying you need to love AI. I'm not saying you need to hate AI, but you need to understand what's happening with your data, with your returns, with your bookkeeping. I want this information like everything that I do. I want it to be approachable. I'm not here to judge how you're choosing to use AI, but I want you to be informed and I want you to be thinking deeper about how AI impacts you, impacts your data, and impacts your overall security and your future. Because if you get audited by the IRS 4 years from now because you were using some tax AI or some preparer that was using it and you had no idea, you're personally responsible generally for those ramifications. You're responsible for digging yourself out of that mess. And if you're choosing to take that risk, I just want you to be aware that that's the risk that you're choosing to take. You're making an informed decision. You're taking an informed risk rather than not being aware.
That's a wrap for this episode of the Wealth Witches podcast. I hope our magical money talks have left you feeling empowered and inspired. Remember, wealth isn't just about dollars in the bank, it's about abundance and financial freedom in all aspects of your life. I'm Katelyn Magnuson, encouraging you to keep challenging the status quo and embrace your inner witch on this financial journey. Until next time, stay magical.